Hi, and welcome to RAVE Leader Chat, Week 6 for the I Am statements in the Gospel of John. Just a quick reminder of the schedule. This week we will do John chapter 15, I am the vine, you are the branches. And then on Easter we will do I am the resurrection and life. If you were the Thursday evening RAVE group, you probably need to talk through what does Holy Week look like. Since we will have a Monday, Thursday worship service at 6:30 on that Thursday. We're probably going to take a couple week break as this study will get us close to the end of April. And right now we haven't set an exact date, but either late May or the beginning of June, we will start the next RAVE season. That's also a good time that if you want to touch base with your group, maybe in a more social way, or maybe think about inviting some other people to join your group in a more social way, that beginning of May would be a great time to do that, or maybe a great time to reach out and service together. I know some of the groups are doing various projects at this point, but if you haven't, this would be a great time to do that. Once again, thanks so much for your leadership and for helping walk people through the I am statements. Again, it just seems like we just started and here we are on the sixth one. So let us go ahead and turn our attention to John chapter 15, focusing on verses 1 through 11. So this is biblically, in the order of the Gospel of John, this is the last I am statement. But it's also a unique I am statement that it comes with like an antecedent that somebody else is named. Almost every other I am statement just is about Jesus. And in verse 1, we hear that Jesus say, I am the true vine, and the Father is the vine dresser or the gardener. So a really good, helpful opening for this is who is the gardener, who is the vine, who are the branches. And then as you go through that discussion, what does that mean for each one of them? What are their responsibilities and their roles? And what are their hopes and their dreams for this? What's the purpose that they hope to get out of this? And so Jesus says, I'm the true vine. And as is picked up in the I am book, the true vine meaning the fulfillment of what God's people are supposed to be. There's much discussion in the book, and very accurately so, about the vine representing Israel in the Old Testament, and oftentimes the critique was that they were producing either no fruit or bad fruit. And so when Jesus says, I am the true vine, he's stating on one level that he is the fulfillment, the embodiment of what faithful living in relationship with God looks like. But that's not the full extent. And so when we stop there, if we just leave it at that, we're going to miss a whole lot of what's being described. And so you sort of get this twofold, that God the Father has a great focus in this passage, and that Jesus is the true vine by which that life goes through. And so as that continues, we want to be attentive to each one of their roles and purpose. So Jesus says, every branch in me that does not bear fruit, the gardener takes away, the vine dresser, God takes away. And every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, that it might bear more fruit. So it's an interesting consideration that if you're producing no fruit, you get lopped off. And if you are producing fruit, you still get pruned. God is busy disciplining his people, so that they might bear more fruit, but it's out of a loving purpose. And that's, sort of highlighted at the end in verses 9 and 10. It's not a mechanical, it is of great care, and the book does a good job of taking that advantage. Verse 3 is kind of a little bit of a transitional puzzle. Already you've been made clean because of the word I've spoken to you. And what really we think Jesus is saying there is, you've already been included into the vine. You've been engrafted because you've heard my word, and that word has taken root in you. So there's a play on words between prune and between lop off, prune, and made clean, that's sort of lost in English. It is much more evident in Greek. But I think that's really what's being said, is that you've been engrafted because you've already listened to the words that I have spoken to you. And that word's going to be intentional and important in what it means to abide. So verse 4, abide in me and I in you. So that's the first time we hear that. We hear this sort of abide and remain. That's a great just point of discussion. What does it mean to abide? And how easy is it to abide? And so as we will walk through this passage, you're going to hear some different aspects of what it means specifically to abide, but just its a description of that and what kind of challenge that is or isn't for us might be good. And then you get these sort of just great truths that we want to wrap our mind around, and it's such an important truth for the church and individual disciples to remember always. As the vine cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you. Us branches, we branches cannot bear fruit apart from being connected to Jesus Christ. And just if that weren't clear enough, then in verse 5, you really get sort of a recap of the alternatives, reinforced to make sure we don't miss them. Jesus says, I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I abide in him will bear much fruit. Now notice it's not the hard work of the vine or the hard work of the branch. It's the abiding of the branch which produces much fruit. We don't have to ramp up to more things. We need to deepen our connection to Christ. And then he continues, but apart from me, you can do nothing. So often we in the church, realizing that God has gifted us and made us, given us gifts and skills and abilities and passions, we really think we can do a lot outside of what, without going off on our own without Jesus. And the reality is, apart from him, we can do nothing. Nothing lasting, nothing permanent, nothing kingdom worthy. And so it's a great reminder that we need to stay, we need to remain, we need to abide in him. And then verse 6 is the opposite of that. If anyone does not abide, then he is thrown away like a branch and withers. And then that branches are gathered and they're thrown into the fire and burned. It's a stark consideration, but an important consideration to think, what are the real long-term options for the branch? And that's really spelled out pretty clearly there. In the book, questions, what would be considered question 3 and 4 are a very good. Question 4 is on this one about there being very little benefit at all to a grape tendril, a grapevine branch that breaks off. It burns so quick, it's hardly even worth the burning. And then so you kind of begin to get the wrap of this section. If you abide in me, now notice it's the expansion of the abide. Abide means to remain in relationship, but also in verse 7, and my words abide in you. So not only do we need to rest in him, but we need to take his word seriously, and his word needs to abide in us. Then we can ask whatever we wish, and it will be done for us. Again, that needs to be, if we're clearly abiding in the vine, whatever we wish for, whatever we are praying for is going to be in line with God's will and what Jesus wants to do in and through us. And then we get to verse 8. There's a part of the godly purpose in this is that the Father is glorified by the fruit that we bear. And therefore we prove to be his disciples. So a good question is, can you be a disciple without making fruit? And what's the outcome for disciples who choose not to participate in bearing some fruit? What does that really look like? Another good question is, what is the fruit? Is there a specific fruit that's being referenced, or what are the fruits maybe that are being talked about in this? And there'll be a question in the email with a couple reference there that I think will help spell that out more. And then again, I mentioned this earlier, verses 9 and 10 really help us make sure that it's not that our relationship with Christ and our relationship with God doesn't turn into pure relationless obedience or legalism, but really stems out of a relationship with love. And so we get that comparison again, as the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love. So we're supposed to abide in Christ. We're supposed to abide in his word. We're supposed to abide in his love for us. These things are all connected. None of them are separate. Part of God's love for us is to give us Christ's word that we might live the best life possible. We might know the truth. And then in verse 10, you get that spelled out, because we hear that and we hear the love part so strong that we might miss the obedience. If you keep my commandments, then you abide in my love. One of the main signs that we really love somebody is we take their words seriously. We put them into practice. And again, notice he compares it. This is a reflection of his relationship, just as Jesus has kept the Father's commands and abide in his love. Throughout the Gospel of John, there's just this wonderful reflection of the way that the relationship he has with the Father is the kind of relationship that he desires us to have with him. And then in verse 11, you hear part of the vine's purpose for all this. I have spoke these things to you that my joy might be in you and your joy might be full. This can't be about rote obedience and lifeless discipleship if this is really about abiding in love and that Christ's joy might be in us and that joy might be complete. We need to continue to live into that and understand that this is relational, and this is a fantastic invitation to do some incredible things that we might bear much fruit, that we might bring the Father glory, that the Son might realize his goal, that we might have joy and joy to the full. Take care and God bless.